On vote 5, Education, Western Cape Appropriation Bill.
I see Minister Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Honourable Premier in absentia, fellow members of the Provincial Cabinet, Chair of the Standing Committee and other members of the Provincial Legislature, Superintendent General of Education, Mr. Brian Schroeder, CFO, Mr. Leon Eli, and my other two colleagues who aren't on holiday, and Education Department officials, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Deputy Speaker, over the last 5 years, it has been my immense privilege to work with this Cabinet and the Western Cape Education Department in improving education outcomes in this province. I am proud of what we have together achieved. As a government, we are committed to ensuring a quality education for every learner in every classroom and in every school in the province. This is given expression through 3 overarching strategic goals, which have all improved, namely improvement in the level of language and mathematics at schools, increase in the number and quality of passes in the NSC, and an increase in the quality of education provision in poorer communities. So let's take a quick look at these improvements. Since I took office in 2014, there has been an improvement in grade 3, 6, and 9 in both mathematics and language in the systemic tests. And I'm particularly proud of schools that have worked hard to achieve excellent results, some in very difficult circumstances. In mathematics, when we compare results from 2014 to 2018, the grade 3 learners pass rate improved by 2.6%, grade 6 by an impressive 12%, and grade 9s by 8.1%. In languages, when we compare results from 2014 to 2018, the grade 3 learners pass rate improved by 3.4%, grade 6 by 0.6%, and grade 9s by 5%. I'm also pleased that we have seen a steady overall improvement in the 2018 systemic tests when comparing them with the results of the baseline tests in 2011. In addition, I'm especially proud that in the category of excellence in academic performance in mathematics grades 3 and 6 this year, all 3 top positions were won by schools from previously disadvantaged communities in Philippi and Gugulethu. These schools are Zanimfundo Primary, Siyazaka Primary, and Sonwabo Primary. Moving on to our matric results, the results over the last 5 years of this administration have built on the progress of our previous administration. Since the DA took over in 2009, we have seen significant improvements in all quality indicators. The total percentage of candidates who passed matric has increased from 75.7% in 2009 to 81.5% in 2018, an increase of 5.8%. Our key quality indicators reflect the same trend. Since 2009, the bachelor pass rate has increased from 31.9% to 42.3%, a remarkable increase of 10.4%. The maths pass rate has increased from 64.9% in 2009 to 76% in 2018, an increase of 11.1%. Physical science pass rate increased from 52.9% in 2009 to 79% in 2018, an impressive increase of 26.1%. The Western Cape has established itself as the leading province in maths and science results, given that our percentage pass rate performance in the NSC remains in the top 3 in mathematics and physical science. When we took office in 2009, the matric pass rate in quintile 1 schools, deemed the poorest, was 57.5%. In 2018, it was 70.5%. Pass rate increases of 10.6% in quintile 2 and 15.6% in quintile 3 schools during the same period were also recorded. The proportion of bachelor's passes in quintiles 1 to 3 has more than doubled since 2009. This is most significant in quintile 1, where the bachelor's proportion went from 8.7% in 2009 to 24.2% in 2018. Only 12% of SA's population, welcome Premier, only 12% of SA's population lives in the Western Cape. Only 12% of SA's population lives in the Western Cape, yet 64% of the NSC special needs candidates came from the Western Cape. We have achieved these improvements while also improving the retention rate in schools. Our retention rates from grades 10 to 12 is the highest in the country by a long way, at around 63%. Mr. Deputy Speaker, today I present to you the 2019-20 budget for the WCED. Against the backdrop of an economy with slow economic growth and high unemployment, and where the effects of rampant corruption at a national level are felt across the province in all departments, and especially in education. The WCED, however, remains vigilant and continues to place emphasis on fiscal consolidation, cost-cutting measures, as well as streamlining and rationalizing projects. whilst remaining committed to our vision of quality education for every learner in every classroom in every school. We are committed to improving the lives of our youth and to giving them the best possible opportunities in life. In order to be able to do this and deal with the ongoing pressures we face, we need a mindset change. We can no longer continue with business as usual. I'm therefore pleased with the evident shift in culture in the WCED over the past 2 years. The WCED is aiming to be a values-driven organization and has identified values-driven learning as a key theme for our 5-year plan to change the mindset of teachers as well as learners. Part of this is to instill respect for each other. This theme focuses on the 6 values of the Western Cape government, and schools have been asked to identify 12 values that symbolize and characterize the values that they want to espouse, and then showcase these values in different ways. In 2017, under the theme Values-Driven Learning, we celebrated the Year of the Teacher, which sought to raise the status of teachers and gain the respect due to them by learners, parents, and communities. In 2018, the theme adopted was the Year of Values-Driven Learning, which helped strengthen the province's culture of excellence in teaching and learning. This year, we are focusing on the Year of the Learner, where all our efforts are focused on preparing them for successful lives and to ensure that they become valuable contributors to society. I'm proud of this initiative and what we have managed to achieve so far. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I must congratulate our CFO, Leon Eli, and his finance team for once again achieving a clean audit for the 4th consecutive year for the 2017-18 financial year. Yes, thank you. You can clap. This is almost unheard of in education, so very well done. Earlier this month, the Provincial Minister of Finance announced that for the 2019-20 financial year, the WCED will receive an amount of 23.669 billion rand. This represents an increase of 1.519 billion rand from the previous financial year. The bulk of the department's funding is for Programme 2, Public Ordinary School Education, with an allocation of 75% of the budget. This is followed by Programme 6, Infrastructure Development, with an allocation of over 1.758 billion rand, which equates to 7.43% of the budget. In the Western Cape, 5.66% of the budget is allocated to special needs, 6.6% to administration, and 2.76% will be allocated to early childhood development in grade R. And on this note, the national government's decision to move ECD to education is going to have huge financial implications, both for staff and for infrastructure. I have raised this at our CHEM meeting. Any move will have to be accompanied by a substantial financial investment, which is unlikely given that the ANC has wasted and stolen most of our money. WCED's vision will only be attainable if we decrease the inequality gap between our rich and poorer schools. As a result of our history, there still remain disparities between poorer and wealthier communities. One of our greatest challenges is how to provide efficient and equitable access to education. As a department and a DA government, we have placed a huge emphasis on improving education in our poorer communities, with a focus on pro-poor initiatives such as learner transport, school feeding, fee exemption, and compensation. One of the WCED's biggest cost drivers is learner transport. In order to assist learners that do not have the required funding or mechanisms to get to their schools, the WCED has a learner transport scheme in place. With increased growth in our province, this has also led to an increased demand for this service. In 2019, 61,602 learners are being transported to 473 schools in the Western Cape. The budget allocated to this pro-poor initiative has increased significantly. In 2014, the WCED spent 268 million rand on learner transport. This figure has increased by over 57%. In the 2019-20 year, over 422 million rand has been budgeted for this program. In MTech discussions earlier this year, we discussed the possibility of changing the learner school transport policy to provide for children living further than 4 kilometers from school instead of the national policy of 5 kilometers for primary school children. Unfortunately, because of the inadequate funding from the National Treasury for additional learners from other provinces, we had to prioritize all funding for additional educator posts and could not do this. If only we could have had some of that never-ending bailout money for state-owned enterprises, we could have done so much more for our poorer learners. In addition, the WCED has allocated over 45 million rand to subsidize hostel accommodation for learners, as this not only reduces the transport costs of the department, but provides other benefits for learners, such as a safe learning environment for homework, access to after-school curricular activities, and academic support. Learners also receive meals which reduce costs of living for parents at home for food, electricity, and water. Tough economic times are leading to a growing number of parents who simply cannot afford to pay school fees. This puts a massive financial strain on fee-paying schools, relying on the collection of fees to sustain their daily running costs. In 2019-20, the WCED budgeted in excess of 58 million rand for fee exemption, far exceeding any other province in this pro-poor policy. Every child has a right to education, and we are very pleased that we can assist these schools with this kind of compensation, as well as assist our parents who are struggling to make ends meet. It is also a way to assist our fee-paying schools that accept learners that subsequently cannot pay school fees. Many of our schools in the Western Cape are classified as quintile 4 and 5, fee-paying, which are supposed to be wealthy, but the reality is that they are attended by an increasing number of poor learners. In the absence of the national government changing the quintile policy after repeated requests, we have had to dig even further into our limited funds to assist these schools. In addition to fee compensation, in 2013, the WCED offered certain public schools serving poorer communities the option to apply for no-fee status. In the 2019-20 financial year, we continued to support 224 schools that have been declared no-fee schools through our own funding mechanisms. In the 2019-20 financial year, we have allocated in excess of 275 million rand to assist our no-fee quintile 4 and 5 schools. There are currently 574 public ordinary fee-paying schools in the Western Cape. In 2018-19, WCD paid out fee compensation to 552 of these schools. This means that the WCD is assisting 96% of fee-paying schools. We have also reached out to our remaining fee-charging schools by topping up their norms and standards allocation in order for the schools to at least have the same income base as a no-fee school and to remain financially viable. 98 schools benefit from this pro-poor policy. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is a sad reality that many children in South Africa arrive at school daily with an empty stomach. This is why the Western Cape government is committed to ensuring that our poorer learners receive not just one, but 2 nutritious meals at school every day. The school nutrition program feeds more than 401,000 learners from 691 schools. The amount allocated to the feeding program for the 2019-20 financial year is more than 385 million rand. In addition, we continue to feed 78,140 learners from historical reasons in 317 quintile 4 and 5 schools that serve poorer communities, as well as 26,507 children in the after-school program to ensure that our poorer learners are able to participate. Various studies show that the Western Cape is showing the greatest progress in transforming education in poor communities. We are positive that many of our pro-poor policies have contributed significantly to this progress. We are making these kind of investments not only because it's the right thing to do, but because it's affording children access to quality education, which, while not sufficient on its own, is a key contributing factor to breaking the cycle of poverty. Mr. Deputy Speaker, more than 113,000 learners have relocated to the Western Cape since 2014, with an additional 20,000 learners arriving for the start of the 2019 academic year. Each learner that enters the province costs the department around 15,500 rand per learner for a primary school learner and 18,700 for a high school learner, excluding infrastructure costs. The cost over the last 5 years is more than 1.84 billion rand. And for this year alone, it is an estimated 596 million. But the funding from National Treasury does not follow the learners, as I've said repeatedly. The necessary equitable share from the national budget should be commensurate with up-to-date learner numbers and compensate for the many years it has not kept pace with the increased numbers. To accommodate this growth in numbers, we are building schools and additional classrooms, but we cannot keep up with the demand without adequate funding. Since 2009, we have completed 131 schools, and this year we will see the completion of another 11 schools. In order to accommodate the additional 20,000 extra learners this year alone, we effectively need another 20 new schools in 1 year, which costs around 60 to 75 million rand per school. This amount equals 1.5 billion rand just for 1 year. Given that we have similar numbers every year, we require that kind of budget every year just for new schools. Given that we still have backlogs in our existing infrastructure requirements, as well as that we have to maintain our existing infrastructure, it is quite obvious that the amount allocated is insufficient. And then there is teachers, feeding, transport, and so on. In 2019-20, we will again be investing a large allocation towards school infrastructure to meet the growing demand for schooling in the province, as well as to replace schools built with inappropriate materials. The allocation towards infrastructure projects is an amount of over 1.7 billion rand, which includes new and replacement schools, upgrading and additions, and refurbishment and rehabilitation of our schools. Maintenance of our existing schools also remains a priority, with many of our poorer schools unable to keep up with the maintenance and repairs. 636 million of this will be allocated towards maintenance in schools. We are also struggling after having to redirect approximately 300 million rand last year from maintenance to drought mitigation measures. Mr. Deputy, another priority for the WCD is to provide for our learners with special needs, for which there is also an increasing demand. This year, we have allocated over 1.3 billion rand to special needs education to accommodate the increasing need. Western Cape is the leading province when it comes to the provision of special needs education. But here again, we are feeling an increased pressure as families are literally moving across the country to find place for their children in our schools. There are currently around 20,000 learners in the province's 71 public special schools, with an additional 75 learners in the School of Skills Year 1 program at Silverstream School, which we have started this year as part of the Manenberg Upgrade program. The Western Cape Education Department provides different levels of support depending on the special educational need identified, in line with national policy on inclusive education. The department identifies learners needing low, moderate, and high levels of support and provides appropriate support to these needs in line with policy. We cater for learners needing low levels of support in mainstream public schools with the support of our 27 outreach teams that operate from special school resource centres. Many special schools also operate as resource centres that support full service and mainstream ordinary schools. We have also established full service ordinary schools that cater for learners with moderate needs. We cater for the learners with high levels of need in special schools. These include schools for the blind, deaf, physically disabled, and those with severe intellectual impairments. Mr. Deputy, the ongoing professional development of our educators is also of the utmost importance, and we will be investing over 106 million rand in that this year. WCD's Cape Teaching and Leadership Institute continues to offer training in a variety of courses. There's also a recent focus on values conversations in schools as part of the Transform to Perform strategy. In all interventions offered at CTLI, there's a strong ICT integration approach. The ICT integration unit at the CTLI delivers integration interventions for teachers, school leaders, and curriculum support officials. ICT training is pitched at 3 levels: novice, intermediate, and advanced, to accommodate teachers, varying ICT competence levels. ICT infrastructure and training content are continually being improved to keep track with the latest developments in the ICT and education field. A new focus is being developed which will research future trends and showcase the latest technologies in an ICT play park for teachers. Has allocated over 239 million rand networks in schools that connect to the WAN. Mr. Deputy, I'm delighted that after more than 2 years, the Western Cape Provincial School Education Amendment Bill was passed by this House in November last year. The bill constitutes the biggest public education reform since 1994 and is designed to achieve excellence in education through improving the assessment of teaching and learning in the classroom and school functioning as a whole. These assessments will be published for parents and communities to see to increase transparency and accountability. The bill is innovative in that it represents a real exercise of a province's concurrent legislative competence in basic education, which many seem to forget that we have. Of course, SATU is now challenging us in court, which we will vigorously oppose. We continue to make pleasing progress in our Collaboration Schools project. Indications are that it is bringing improved education to poor communities, to which we are absolutely committed. We now have 11 schools as part of this project, with another new school joining in April this year. Since the inception of this new model, the results of the systemic tests, as well as the NSC results at these schools, have increased significantly, but SATU says they can't see any proof of improvement. Special mention must be made of Langa High School. For the last few years, the school's matric results have been unacceptably low. In 2015, it had a 41.9% pass rate. In 2016, it dropped to 34.3%. We decided to approach the school about becoming one of our new collaboration schools in 2017. After quite a lot of skepticism, it was agreed. In the 2017 NSC, they achieved 49.7%, and in 2018, they achieved a 78% pass rate. Again, well done to all involved. It is once again becoming a school of choice and pride in the community. I hope now that the amendment bill has passed, and given the successful pilot, that we can motivate for additional funders to come on board so that more of our schools that accommodate learners from disadvantaged communities may benefit from this exciting new model of schooling. SATU, of course, is also opposing this provision of our bill, saying that there is no evidence. We beg to differ. Regarding the School Evaluations Authority, last month we gazetted the draft regulations pertaining to this SEA for public comment. This is an exciting development since the bill was passed last year. The closing date for comments was the 18th of March, and as soon as the regulations are finalised, we shall advertise for the Chief Evaluator to be appointed. The Premier also published a proclamation on the 27th of February 2019, putting into effect certain sections of the bill, including the classroom observation. So anybody who prevents this will be acting illegally. SATU seems to regard it as urgent that this measure be stopped. I have to wonder why. A safe learning environment is a critical requirement for quality teaching and learning to take place. The WCED implements various strategies to address school violence and safety. Unfortunately, many of the safety risks are a result of community and gang violence, which affects the safety environment of our schools. A few weeks ago, it was highlighted that just this year there have been 17 reported stabbing incidents at Western Cape schools, many of which were gang-related. It is devastating that the anti-gang unit of the SAPS appears to be making little impact, thus leaving these issues once again to be dealt with by our teachers. As I've said before, the Western Cape government has a vast number of initiatives that we have undertaken transversely to try and curb gang violence in our schools, and we are doing as much as we can as an education department to try and protect our schools. But we simply do not have the legislative mandate, security manpower, or budget to guarantee learner safety from gang violence. I'm excited about the development of the risk classification tool that will allow us to identify and classify existing and emerging safety risks so that the relevant security infrastructure and other resources are deployed when and where most needed. And I hope to see it properly implemented soon. I've spoken ad nauseum about what we have been doing, and our Chief Director, Alan Mayer, continues to chair the School Safety Committee with great success. The City of Cape Town has also been extremely helpful to us, especially in respect of the school resource officers, which also assist to alleviate the struggles faced by the department in dealing with school violence, particularly where there is a high rate of gangsterism. We have 53 schools involved with 136 school resource officers. The role these officers play in our schools is absolutely significant. Not only do they have the skills to react to certain emergency situations, but they also provide a sense of safety and protection. We are also linking schools' burglar alarms to the city's traffic management centre, where they can be monitored, and in cases of need, the Metro Police's response unit can assist. This has been necessary as a result of the lack of response, unfortunately, of some private companies that have been paid by schools and lack of maintenance by schools of their alarms. The plan is in the early stages, but has great potential. In addition, we now have a Safe Schools officer permanently stationed at the TMC, which is assisting in better coordinating responses to the relevant role players in the case of any incident at schools. I'm also excited about a new partnership with a corporate company, which has resulted in a security solution being piloted at 4 schools in the metro area. This includes access control, biometric data to ensure that there is control over who enters and leaves the school premises, and use of artificial intelligence to alert principals and anyone monitoring school premises to any unusual activity on or outside the premises. This has the potential to be a very exciting innovation in school safety, and I will be announcing more on that later in next month. We have allocated 112.518 million rand over the 2019 MTEF to specific school safety initiatives. This will include the installation of secure perimeter fencing, restricted electronic access, monitored alarm systems, Safe Schools call centre, walking bus program, security resilience scorecard, and strategic partnerships between schools and communities. While this funding will not necessarily end violence in and around our schools, it will be used to provide and reinforce targeted security infrastructure support to schools. Unfortunately, despite the additional security support and enforcement, some of our schools still fall victim to vandalism and burglaries, even more so now that we have ICT in schools. In 2019-20, 30 million rand has been allocated to the Emergency Maintenance Fund, which will assist in repairing schools affected by burglary and vandalism. So, Deputy, we have a long way to go still, but the progress to date is undeniable. I want to pay tribute to SG Brian Schroeder, specifically our EXCO and our committed teams for their constructive and innovative approach and ongoing commitment to the learners of the Western Cape. I also want to pay tribute to all our educators who give so much of themselves to improve the opportunities for others and for their support and understanding in these extremely difficult financial times. It has been a real pleasure and privilege working with all of you over the last 5 years, and I want to thank you for your support. I also want to thank the members of the Standing Committee under the Honourable Basil Kiwido for their oversight and for holding us accountable. Thank you to the Premier for giving me the absolute privilege of serving the Western Cape in this crucial position, and my Cabinet colleagues for their collegiality over the last 5 years. Last but not least, I'm going to leave my family out because they're not here, but I really want to thank... They are vital. It's going to Hansard, okay. Okay. I'll do them afterwards. I do want to say a very special thank you to my office staff sitting up there, without whom I would not be able to do what I do. Thanks to Brona Hammond, who headed my office for the first 4 years and is now very capably running the department in the Communications Directorate, and Anne Schlebusch, who stepped in rather unexpectedly after she retired from the department last year. A big thanks also to Jessica Shalva, who's done an absolutely amazing job as my spokesperson, and to Tandazwa Nchonga, Debbie Lewis, Audrey Frasenberg, Irene King, Nomonde Mbali, Naliswa Bokwana, and Lynn Coleridge-Zolls. We have really been a great team, and I want to thank every one of you. And seeing as it's going into Hansard, I do want to acknowledge the support of my family, which has been immense and very highly valued. Thank you so much.
Die achtbare lid Kiwido.
Honourable Premier, members of the Executive, fellow members on both sides of the House, members of the Ministry of Education, HOD, Mr. Brian Schroeder of the WCD and his team, special guests, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I've reached the end of my road, the end of the rope. But at the end of the rope, there's still some hope. This is going to be my last and final speech in this Parliament. Member Magaga, I have a spare handkerchief for you to wipe those tears. I can see them. I know you are going to miss me a lot. I thank the Minister, Debbie Schäfer, for the exhaustive input. She said it all. It felt good on the ear. It was good to listen to what's happening within the educational realm. I want to comment and make a few comments. As I said, it's my final speech, and hopefully my final famous last words. Member Dagmar. Speaker, Honourable Speaker, in South Africa, investing in education is not only the right thing to do, but should be regarded as smart economics. Because upon graduation at any level, social dividends are paid out. En dit is maar van die soort van uitskieters wat 'n mens kry wanneer daar belê word in sosiale kapitaal. Dat onderwys nie gedekontekstualiseer kan word nie, maar altyd binne konteksverband sodat ons die impak daarvan op die gemeenskap ten volle kan besef. En dit is die tipe van reperkusies. Sodat dit gaan maar in elk geval oor die holistiese en die geheelbenadering tot onderwys. En ek dink die minister het baie goed daarop uitgewys ook. And poverty strikes those without education the hardest. Continual investment in education, its support units and programs at schools not only allows for the participants to grow, but for the whole of society to flourish on knowledge. However wonderful the prospect of education seems to be, the socio-economic characteristics in this country pose serious threats to the performance of the sector of education and training. Of particular concern in the Western Cape is, inter alia, safety in schools linked to the increased numbers of vandalism, gangsterism within communities that offer alarming economic avenues for our vulnerable youth, and thirdly, spiraling cases of bullying, substance abuse amongst minors, and the list goes on. Maar ek wil net dit duidelik stel dat hierdie drie aspekte nie trane trekkers moet wees nie, maar dat dit juis uitdagings bied vir ons almal, wetstoepassers sowel as die gemeenskap, in terme van 'n verantwoordelikheidsin, in terme van bepaalde kompetensies wat aan ons as burgery in hierdie land opgelê word om hande te vat om hierdie patologie aan te spreek. This is on top of the actual problem we face regarding service pressure, yet Western Cape Education Department displayed outstanding performance over the last 10 years under the leadership of the Democratic Alliance. Inter alia, an 81 pass rate in matric, 2, 76% in mathematics, 79% in science. Fourthly, the best retention rate in the country. And lastly, the Democratic Alliance also managed to build 200 new classrooms per year. Deputy Speaker, it is thus rightfully so that education receives the second largest portion of the budget in the Western Cape. It is a service that we cannot compromise on. The allocated 23 billion will go a long way in optimizing the opportunities that education presents for some of our most vulnerable citizens, youth and children. They face unprecedented challenges, and for many, a school is a place of safety, a place where goals are cultivated and supported in order to reach their maximum potential. In response to these unprecedented challenges, Honourable Deputy Speaker, the 2019 Western Cape budget offers the following. A 5-year teacher development plan will be prioritised with an allocation of 337 million over the 2019 MTF. With the increase in the number of learners per classroom, teachers battle with the increased pressure. They are the ones experiencing the real service demand. Hence, we welcome the increase in sub-program 2.3 for human resource development, especially in public schools. Coping with this demand, this will hopefully also address quality concerns within classrooms. 2.1 million is also set aside for building resource capacity. The teacher support program will also focus on ICT training. Learners will thus be enabled to meet demand of the world we live in, but more importantly, the world of work. Teachers further have to be emotionally fit to react to challenges our learners face in schools. It is important that we enhance their well-being with the necessary support. Eradicating backlogs in school infrastructure in previously disadvantaged communities indirectly upgrades the standard of schools. During 2019, public school maintenance programs will be supplemented with 484 million rand. The largest portion of infrastructure allocations will also go to public schools to the value of 1.6 billion. Given the socio-economic conditions of this country, we also know that despite the challenges we face, schools offer an escape to the poor under the National School Nutrition Program. Will receive a staggering 385 million during 2019. I repeat, 385 million. Oubaas van Sebende Laan sou nou gesê het, dis 'n bedrag van epidermiese omvang. We are aware of the growing inequalities in our school Therefore, beside the unconditional allocations, public school receives the bulk of the budget, totaling 17.7 billion. An earmarked allocation of 46 million for 2019 will also supplement the after-school initiative in building school halls and fields at public schools that will stimulate activeness in meaningful activities. Om aansluiting te vind by my vorige stelling wat ek gemaak het, die buitekurrikulêre aktiwiteite wat dan aanvullend is tot die kognitiewe ontwikkeling van die kind, waar ons dan buitemuurse bedrywighede het, waar ons geheel ontwikkeling van die totale leerder het. Pragtig. 109 million will be allocated towards the promotion of mathematics and science over the 2019 MTF to equip schools with the necessary resources and laboratory equipped to enhance our already groundbreaking performance. This will help schools to unearth the next generation of scientists, engineers, and mathematicians who will help to move South Africa forward. Every sector of our country, every sector of our economy has been transformed by technology, and there is no job where mathematics is not useful. The budget further makes allowance for early childhood development, which is important in laying strong educational foundations. Program 5 will thus receive 652 million in total. In expanding services to the vulnerable, 21 million is set aside for the development of life skills related to HIV and AIDS in supporting individuals who battle with this disease of their support networks. Honourable Deputy Speaker, Josephine Baker once said, the best way to protect oneself is with a pen and not the gun. How true. This means that we need to equip ourselves with the necessary knowledge to overcome each and every stumble block life presents, instead of resorting to violence and intolerance, which more than often than not results in nothing. Thus, very much like this budget seeks to do, despite the multitude of challenges, specifically within the education sector, with regards to various forms of violence, including those of structural violence. It will use well-informed and innovative plans to overcome these challenges. We cannot allow any form of violence or socio-economic obstacles to deter us from reaching our goals. These innovative ways by WCD includes Collaboration Schools program, which have affected 150 million private funding to disadvantaged communities. The CSP will be allocated with 152 million over the 2019 MTF. The school safety program strategies include installing security systems while also addressing the social environment by influencing learner behavior and by working with schools to mobilize community support for safer schools. Under Program 1, that seeks to enhance support services at schools, 4 million has been earmarked for the after-schools education incentive. But more importantly, and to conclude, the current crisis in school further requires a whole-of-society approach, of which bullying is becoming an alarming concern that affects the well-being and performance of our children. Thus, I would like to appeal to this House that behavior is learned, and therefore we all as public representatives, parents and members of communities have to take responsibility in setting good examples for learners. This extends to matters of substance abuse and issues around bullying. I want to appeal to everyone in this House that, like this budget, we need to do everything in our power to keep our children in school, encourage performance, and participate in activities that will show our support towards their well-being. They need this acknowledgement. This certainly helped to bring effect to the budget. And then, before I table this budget for acceptance, I just want to thank the following people and institutions: the parliamentary staff and the whole support staff, Premier, for your guidance, support and leadership over 10 years. The members of the executive, thank you very much for your example that you set as role models, and also the support and advice that I got from you as a person. Fellow members, both the ANC and the DA, I love you all. It was wonderful working with you in my tenure of 5 years. I've learned such a lot. I know exactly what it is to be on a learning curve, and to make friends and to embrace each other, because we have a common goal, a common dream for this country, that we are going to take this country forward and be proud South Africans. The Ministry of Education, and specifically Minister Debbie Schaffer, thank you very much for your guidance and your perseverance in making this Western Cape education sector work. The same with the ministry, the same accolades for them, and also the WCD, Mr. Brian Schreder and your team, you are champions. All stakeholders in the education department, my committee coordinators, Wasima Hassan Musa, Mary Ann Burgess, Ben Dawson, Mario Seisman, thank you so much for your assistance. Our legal experts, our interpreters, and also the IT service who made our meetings possible. The whole fifth floor family, from the Chief of Staff, Stian Carlson, to the princess on the floor, Colleen, who keeps everything tidy and neat and making life comfortable for us. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. To my PA, Tanya Stein-Dawi, thank you very much for taking my hand, and not for too long, just taking my hand. Thanks very much for that. I really appreciate it. All functionaries on the fifth floor, they know who they are, the media and research unit. I also to thank the mainstream media. And then we must also remember we went on different oversight visits and public participation, and there are 3 people who really took care of us and made our journeys safe. And I'm going to name them. They are Enwell Barnes, Marlon Issel, and Wayne Naidu. Thank you so much for that. That we can't take these things for granted, that we will arrive safely and arrive safe home, arrive alive. No, they brought us safe. And in conclusion, I want to thank my wife, Rochelle, and my 12-year-old son. Yes, miracles still do happen. My 12-year-old son, his name is Buddha. I want to thank Buddha for my Buddha, Thane. His real name is Thane, but we call him Buddha. Yes, I want to thank them for their sustained support and underpinning, and therefore the DA supports this vote. I thank you so much.
Honourable Bierwinkel.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I think the honourable member forgot to thank Mr. Bowman, who went to fetch him out of the wrong plane in Nigeria when he almost got lost. You must do that.
Thank you, Honourable Member. It's not that wasn't a point of order, it's simply a correction. I see the Honourable Dugmore.
Thank you very much, Deputy
Order.
Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I'm also pleased that we have an opportunity to speak immediately after Mr. Kivido, because there is actually something which has been on my mind, which I'd wanted to actually clear up in this House, because I think as we all gather from Mr. Kivido's input, he does spread and share love, and he is someone that has been very passionate about his role as chair of this committee. But the concerning issue which I feel I need to raise here is that in his absence, when he took ill, Member Botha issued a statement implying that myself, and I'm actually standing in for Member Olivier today, and Member Olivier actually intimidated Honourable Member Kivido in regard to the issue of the Western Cape Schools Amendment Bill. Now, the reality is that no such intimidation ever happened. No such intimidation ever happened. And I want to use this opportunity in the House to indicate that the relationship that we have with Mr. Kivido is a respectful one, and it was unfortunate that Member Botha issued a statement which was both untruthful and attempted to imply that we intimidated Member Kivido. That's not the way that our relationship. And to make matters worse,
Order.
To make matters worse, Deputy Speaker, Member Botha attempted to say that our views were indicative of gender discrimination, whereas in fact her conduct towards Member Kivido and us as members actually spoilt the atmosphere in the committee, because there would be no way that we would ever want to intimidate Member Kivido about his views on the Western Cape Schools Amendment Bill. I want to use this opportunity to correct that and say we respect you, and we all know that unfortunately the DA tried to make cheap politics through Member Botha of something which was never true. The vision of this department is quality education.
Order. Please. Order. Honourable Magaka.
Speaker, I'm rising to complain about the disruption that is continuous,
Yes.
with no full stop from Honourable Maseko and his
Magaka, yes, thank you.
noise. It's really
I will
making it difficult.
I understand that and I agree. I will take it further. Please come to order that side of the House and allow the member to proceed. Honourable Botha.
Deputy Speaker, through you, is Member Dugmore prepared to take a question?
Honourable Dagmar, are you prepared to take a question?
No,
Doesn't seem
Deputy,
so,
I
no.
think Member Botha is guilty because she made a false allegation, and that is for the record.
Order.
But Deputy Speaker, the vision of this department
Order.
is quality
Honourable-
education.
Dagmar, just 1 second. Honourable Mitchell.
I'm rising, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because throughout the entire introduction, Member Dagmar was casting a direct aspersion on the character of Honourable Botha, but he refrained from saying how he attempted to bully Member Botha in the chair during that committee.
Order. There's not a point of order. It's a debating point, but please continue, Honourable Dagmar.
Deputy Speaker, I just felt it was important to indicate to this House, beyond any doubt, that myself or Member Olivier have never intimidated Member Kivido, and that is for the record. I want to say that the vision of this department is quality education for every learner in every classroom, in every school in the province, and we all agree with the 3 overarching goals, which are an improvement in the level of language and mathematics in all schools, an increase in the number and quality of passes in the National Senior Certificate, and thirdly, an increase in the quality of education provision in poorer communities. We all agree with that. The MEC spoke at length about this in her foreword and also in her speech today. And on language and mathematics in the systematic tests, she was pleased, according to her, with the steady improvement in 2018 when compared to 2011. But the true reflection of systemic results is as follows. In languages and maths for grade 6, the province dropped from 40.1% in 2016 to just over 38% in 2017. We observed similar trends for grade 9, where the province dropped from over 55% in 2016 to 53% in 2017 for languages, and maths dropping from 23% to just 22%. So when one wants to claim a steady improvement, one shouldn't just go back to 2011, but one should actually look at the last couple of years, and it is very clear that we notice a disturbing downward spiral, which we need to be honest about and not try and spin it in terms of a comparison to 2011. There has been a downward spiral, and in fact that downward spiral is reflective in the matric results as well. On the quality of matric results, the Western Cape dropped from 86% in 2016 to just 81.5% in 2018. a similar trend that we're picking up from the systemic results. In terms of bachelor passes, we dropped from 41.7% in 2015 to 39.1% in 2017. It only increased to 42% in 2018 after the subjects like tourism and others were added into the basket and subjects for the B degree. So Speaker, Deputy Speaker, on provision of quality education in poor communities, contrary to what the MEC has claimed, as a province we are found wanting. If one looks at the number of schools, the underperforming schools, the vast majority of those come from those districts where levels of poverty are at their worst. For instance, schools with a pass rate lower than 60% actually increased from 21 in 2016 to 45 in 2018. And these are schools in our poor communities. Some of the contributing factors to this are the issue of safety in poor communities, also an issue that Member Kivido referred to. The overcrowding in schools in poor community has also increased to crisis levels. And just on that point, Deputy Speaker, I think the most revealing page in the Blue Book is page 172, which indicates what choice this province itself could make in regard to how important funding for education is. Because we're all aware of the fact that we get equitable share, we get conditional grants, and that we also have then allocations from the Provincial Revenue Fund. You would see that in 2016, there was an amount of 557 million rand from the Provincial Revenue Fund that boosted the equitable share as well as the conditional grant. We've had a dramatic decrease of 67% towards education from the Provincial Revenue Fund, down to this year in question to 90 million. So that's an indication that where the province has got the ability, because the equitable share is based on those formulas, those are allocated, but this province deliberately cut the allocation from the Provincial Revenue Fund to education by 70%. And then we begin to ask questions about issues of equality, issues of infrastructure, and why we are not spending enough on those particular matters. And what is of concerning when one actually looks at the issue of overcrowding, when we look at the annual performance plan and you look at page 93, you look at the plans for building of new schools. For this year, there's plans to build 4 new schools, 2021, 3, 2021, 22, 3. Now the MEC, which is a total of 10 over the next 3 years, the MEC herself indicates that we have a growth in learner numbers of almost 20,000 per year. And yet what we have in the annual performance plan to deal with this, besides the 70% reduction in terms of allocation from the Provincial Revenue Fund, is a plan to build 10 schools. And yet we are having, according to the MEC, an influx. Just as Gauteng does, they also have to make plans in regard to looking at their provincial resources and deciding on what to help. But we all would be prepared to concede, as we should, that the fiscal environment is constrained at the moment. So we would then expect the department to be looking at alternative solutions. If you, for instance, look at the fact that we have 1,400 schools in our province, if we, for instance, were able to take a view that we should look at those schools and how we can add to the capacity of our existing schools, and if one simply asked each of those 1,400 schools, and this is obviously an average, to take 100 extra learners, which would be about 10 per grade or 2 or 3 per class, that would give us 14,400 spaces. Now, obviously, I'm not implying that every school is the same, but we are not seeing we're seeing the department throw up their hands about 20,000 extra learners. We're seeing absolute silence about the reduction of 70% in allocation to the education budget from Provincial Revenue Fund, but we're not seeing any innovation. I've spoken to the Milnerton High School principal, and he has indicated a commitment to have extra classrooms, and that is a school which is experiencing immense pressure, particularly at grade 8. And for 3 years, he's been engaging the department around his willingness to have an extra classroom built for each of the grades in his school. But there has not been any movement on that. So there are schools who are prepared to add to their capacity. It's not only about building new schools. It's about utilizing the space that we have in our classrooms by bringing in extra learners, and at existing schools, building extra classrooms. And we are not seeing that kind of a plan from the MEC in regard to dealing with these issues. So these are the things that the budget is meant to respond to. But unfortunately, the MEC has failed to actually deliver on this and wants to blame as much as you can on national government. Whereas we have a situation in 1994, when the ANC came to power, there was only and a registration, 51% of the possible maximum number of learners were registered in our schools. That figure now is about 86%. So we've dramatically increased the number of learners in our schools. The matric pass rate has moved from just over 50% to about 78% as a national average. And no one can argue that the quality of the matric pass rate in 2018 is worse than it was in 1994. These are gains that have actually been made. But under the budget, if you look at page 167, the department misleads the public when it states that capital expenditure has decreased to 4.48% of the estimated expenditure. This will affect mainly provision for infrastructure projects as well as computers and equipment. And that's the point that I'm making, the reduction that we are seeing. The reality is that when one compares the 2018-2019 revised estimates as well as the 2019-20 allocation, you will see that it actually increased from the national point of view.
Thank you. Remember, your time has expired.
But it reduced in regard to the Provincial Revenue Fund. And this indicates the lack of seriousness towards education from this cabinet led by
Thank
the
you. Remember, your
Premier.
time has expired. In the absence of the ACDP and the EFF, I again see Minister Schaefer to respond.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'm going to start with Honourable Dugmore in case I run out of time. I want to just express my extreme disappointment at the sidelining of Honourable Ulafir in this final debate of the term, and also on the list of the ANC, as I wanted to say thank you for the constructive working relationship that we had with him. As far as the Honourable Member's statements about Member Botha, it's an absolute and utter nonsense. He's effectively accusing her as well as Honourable Kivido of lying, because that is where she got her information from. And it's quite frankly shocking that the ANC will go to such desperate lengths to try and keep this bill from going through. We know it doesn't align with your desire to control everything centrally, but we are in the interests, are acting in the interests of the learners in this province. So to say that he lied to Honourable Botha is completely unacceptable in this House and untrue. Systemic test, yes, we have already discussed most of these issues in the Standing Committee. It did drop because we increased the standard of some of the questions, as we explained to Honourable Dugmore. He must have forgotten. The matric pass rate, we've also explained, but for the record of Hansard, the reason we dropped is because we don't kick our children out and stop them writing the final exam. There is one province that we had reported at our recent KEM meeting. There were 25% of the matrics did not write the final exam. They were either absent or they wrote the MEO over 2 sessions. So by doing that, they managed to increase their pass rate by about 5%, which is not what we want to do in the Western Cape, not what we're going to do in the Western Cape. And the fact of the matter is that the last KEM meeting has now resolved to scrap the MEO because of their manipulation of other provinces. Unanimously, we agreed to scrap it. Then we'll see the real issue as to how the improvement, so-called, is reflected by simply looking at matric percentages. Schools in poor community are absolutely being affected by overcrowding. I've raised it many, many times, and it's not a case of blaming national government. It's national government's fault that there is no money. It is their fault that they don't adjust the equitable share formula. It is not our fault that money has been wasted and stolen and that some people are sitting in Dubai having 100 million rand weddings while we can't afford to pay our teachers. It's not our fault. So as far as the Provincial Revenue Fund is concerned, as far as I recall, that was for the drought. It was an exceptional measure. So, I mean, they only have a certain amount in the revenue fund. We also have extreme needs in other departments too, not only education. We had to do some work on Tygerberg Hospital, for example. So we can't have everything every year. We should be getting our correct allocation from national government. We would love to build more than 10 schools or 3 schools or however many schools. We would love to. But it's all very well to say alternative solutions. What alternative solutions are there? Even if we get 100 extra children in every school, we need extra teachers. There isn't money for teachers. So don't come and tell me to come up with alternative solutions. Unless we have the money, we can't do that. We can't build more schools than we have money for. Otherwise, we end up like Eskom, where they have no money for anything because they keep spending more than they actually have. We don't get bailed out by national government like the state-owned enterprises do, and we can't do that. I've also raised the issue with Milnerton High School. I did discuss it also at the Standing Committee, where Honourable Dugmore raised the issue of Milnerton High School. I have taken it up again with the department, but you were told at the meeting that the reason why we haven't taken it up is because the principal was demanding other things too, not just, well, that's what we were told, and we are taking it out. We have taken it up. So the fact of the matter is, yes, we've got growth, but we can't force more schools to take more people. We've already approached a large number of schools over the last few years to take in extra capacity, and they've been very good in doing so. Many schools have added extra classrooms. So it's time for people to stop blaming us for things that are beyond our control. We've done more than we can expect to do under any in normal circumstances. Honourable Kivido, thank you very much. We will certainly miss your colourful language, no question about that. And thank you for clarifying that hand-holding episode with your secretary. When you reach the end of your road, I hope there will be some light at the end of the tunnel. I'm sure there will. I completely agree with you on the social problems. We have to have more responsibility being taken by communities and particularly parents. We're doing what we can under education in espousing values and promoting values in the system. And at the conference we had over the last 2 days at the CTICC, which was really amazing, we had the absolute privilege of having the 2018 Global Teacher of the Year, Andrea Zafiraku, speak to us. And she works in a very poor school in London, where really there are a lot of huge multicultural community where many problems exist. And she said, what would you say to teachers working in difficult communities? And she said, expect high standards of your children, don't accept mediocrity. And that is crucial. We cannot allow, difficult as our circumstances are, we've got to think differently and be positive and get the best out of our children and our teachers. And the other thing she said about parental involvement is praise the children to the parents, and the parents will come. And I thought that was really profound. It was praise the children to the parents, praise their performance, give the parents something to be proud of their children, and they will become more involved. As far as maths and science is concerned, that is crucially important, but we also are moving towards STEAM Mac now, not just STEM anymore, which is science, technology, engineering, accounting, maths, agriculture, and coding, or computational skills to bring our system in line with the 21st century skills and the needs of our province, particularly in agriculture. So that's a really exciting move as well, and Andrea was very, very proud. She was very excited with that development as well. Bullying is an ongoing concern, as is substance abuse. We are taking a hard line on both of those issues. And it is really worrying that children actually sit in the playground with their drugs and smoke on school premises. I mean, no school can have somebody watching every child every minute of the day. And one of the methods we are trying to deal with that is by the proposed intervention facility as an alternative with the agreement of parents to have interventions instead of expelling learners from school. But of course, that's also being opposed by SATU, so we'll see how that goes. So thank you very much for your comments, and thank you again to all of you. I just also want to end up by thanking all the education stakeholders, which I forgot to mention. I think we've actually had a very productive relationship over the last 5 years. We don't always agree, but when we don't, we have really done so in a professional and a respectful manner. So thank you to all of them. Thanks.
That concludes the debate on this vote. We will now suspend business and resume at 1400. The House is suspended.